Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to WU Vienna, the largest and only business university in the country and one of the largest of its kind in Europe. Is it better now? Do you have an echo? Okay. Well, my name is Bernadette Kamleitner. I'm Vice Rector for Research and Third Mission here at Vienna, and it's my honor to welcome you on behalf of the entire Rectorate. Well, it's great to see that so many of you have come today, and from what I gather, the audience is rather diverse also. And I'd like to welcome a few guests in particular without naming anyone, but just to kind of like demonstrate the diversity of people in the room in here. From what I know, we've got representatives of 3 ministries. From the Federal Ministry of Finance, representatives from the Ministry of Education, Science and Research, and from the Ministry, super long title, Climate Action, Environment, Energy, Mobility, Innovation and Technology. And beyond that, we've of course also lots of other experts that want to benefit from today's expert discussion. I'm happy to welcome guests from the Bundesrechenzentrum, from the Austrian Research Promotion Agency, FFG, and of course, a special welcome to all of you who are associated with WU, the students, the faculty, and the alumni. And of course, a very warm welcome to our representatives of the World Bank, who essentially are the reason we are here today. Today, we look forward not only to a lively discussion and gaining some new insights that might inspire all of us, we also are meeting to celebrate. WU is very happy to announce that we are joining the World Bank's GovTech Global Partnership Network. And let me just briefly outline why we believe WU is a very great fit for that and a nice addition to a pretty stellar academic partnership network already. The motto of the World Bank's GovTech initiative is putting people first. One of its major goals is to help improve the lives of citizens around the world. It's a platform and a network for the exchange of ideas and best practices, and for providing resources and training to countries and institutions across the entire globe. As a responsible university, and a university that values and honors its commitment to third mission, WU has a very similar goal, albeit on a smaller scale. We want to make positive contributions to society and to help society develop in ways that sustainably improve people's lives. We leverage our manifold competences and resources in research and teaching to work toward this aspiration, and we do so in a dialogue with loads of stakeholders that share this ambition. WU has a very long tradition in third mission activities. Our scholars work together with businesses, NGOs, MPOs, and public institutions in numerous areas, ranging from health economics, legal issues, inequalities, entrepreneurship, including social entrepreneurship, urban management, green finance, sustainable mobility, and so on. It may thus come as no surprise that we also have some touch points with the World Bank. To mention just one, Professor Jesus Crespo-Quaresmo from our economics department has been consulting with the World Bank for years on topics of development economics. And just a few months ago, WU hosted the presentation of the World Bank report, The Future of Work, Implications for Equity and Growth in Europe. It's a very thought-provoking read, can highly recommend it. And today, we celebrate yet another touch point. We celebrate joining the World Bank's GovTech Global Partnership Network, which has become possible through another stellar professor in this room and responsible for today's event, Verena Dorner. And she will also guide us through today's evening, so you will get to know her later on. What you'll also get is the expert's view on the GovTech initiative in particular. From what I understand as a layperson, it aims to improve lives of citizens around the world by supporting countries in adopting sound practices and solutions in GovTech. And a very good way of doing this is to provide global analytical and thought leadership in GovTech. And that's where we come in, fortunately. WU is very happy to join stellar academic partners in contributing to this leadership, such as Korea's KDI School of Public Policy and Management, the Bocconi School of Management in Italy, but also the Governance Lab at MIT in the US. and now also WU. The GovTech initiative provides us with a wonderful opportunity to intensify and expand our international cooperations and to contribute to projects that improve citizens' lives on a global scale, not just a regional scale. And when the initiative was established back in 2019, believe it or not, Austria was among the first and one of the first 3 country partners in this initiative, alongside Switzerland and Korea. And now we are very happy that WU is the first Austrian university partner in this network. Before I hand over to somebody who really knows what the GovTech initiative is about, our renowned keynote speaker, I'd just like to finish my welcome words with 2 important words: thank you. I'd like to say thank you to all of those who made this event today possible. That includes Professor Dorner and her team and the entire ISOM department in the background. Thanks for bringing in this highly timely and important topic and this collaboration to WU, and for arranging such an impressive set of contributors and panelists. Verena will introduce them later, but let me thank you for being here. I know it's an evening that you could also spend otherwise, and doing so here, sharing your insights with everybody, is very much appreciated. And thanks to all of you for being here today, and thanks also to those people that you might not see that easily, but that are essentially in any event, if it wants to become successful. That's the event management team, whose relentless efforts, both on and behind the stage, make days like this possible. And finally, thank you all again for being here today. An event like this only makes sense if there are people attending it, benefiting from it, discussing about it, and sharing the knowledge that they gained. And today we have a very nice incentive for you to stay on and make the most out of it, because there will be a little buffet at the very end. You're all welcome to join and discuss with the panelists and each other, and essentially go away with an enriched mindset and some new insights. So all that's left for me is now to welcome and thank in particular, so I try to get this right, João Ricardo Vasconcelos from the World Bank's Vienna office, whose comprehensive expertise includes, it includes government approaches for public sector digitalization, green GovTech, civic tech, interoperability, inclusive GovTech, and service delivery. I'm very much looking forward to benefiting from your experience. Welcome to Vienna, João. The stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let me also start thanking the WU for this invitation. It's really a pleasure to be here and to share with you the work that the World Bank is doing specifically in this area of GovTech. I've prepared here some slides, so let me see if I can see them projected here. Okay. So perfect. Trying to and leveraging the excellent audience that we have here. I don't need to convince you that the digital transition is here. It's changing the way that we live, that we work, that we connect with each other. So today, digital is totally omnipresent on all the activities, or most of the activities that we do in our daily lives. But if there's one thing that we've been also understanding more and more, is that beyond the, let's say, the super optimism that digital can bring, there are also a lot of challenges that need to be tackled. And that's why issues of governance within digital are absolutely fundamental. So you need governance and you need the commitment of governments together to try to regulate, to set standards on digital. So making sure that the expectations of the citizens are met on the different dimensions of digital. And let me also bring you something that it will not be a news to many of you. GovTech, or when we talk about GovTech, of government technology, we're not focusing specifically or only on technology itself. We normally say that GovTech, it's much beyond the technology. It's much beyond the bits and bytes of it. So we're not discussing exclusively the technical issues around the digitalization of government, but we are touching on other things. We are focusing on how to mobilize people and make sure that people within the public sector are ready for the change underway. How we prepare the different organizations to this change and make sure that they address in the best possible way digitalization within their processes, within their services. And the World Bank has been working and supporting countries all over the world in this area for decades, let's say. But as it was mentioned, it was in the end of 2019 that it was launched the GovTech Global Partnership. And the GovTech Global Partnership is based on a concept of GovTech understood as an advanced stage of digital government. Okay, so a government that is able to respond to citizens' demands and needs, transforming the public sector, going beyond just digitalizing the bureaucracy, but really using digitalization as an opportunity to change, to simplify procedures, to make sure that you have the right administrative modernization in place. And the way that we understand GovTech, it's based on 3 pillars. So we focus on issues of citizen centricity when developing public services. We also, so putting the citizen really at the center of the services that are being developed, we focus also on what we call whole of government approaches, because guess what? One of the big challenges that governments face is to make sure that when embracing this change, they can do it in a coherent and sustainable way and not just following siloed approaches, and also focusing on simple, efficient, and transparent government systems. So these are the 3 premises around this. But when we developed and when we embraced the GovTech Global Partnership, again, if you want to discuss the transformation of government, you cannot do it only with the expertise of government experts. So you need to bring on board the private sector, the academia, the civil society, and because the World Bank likes to do what it preaches, so we've been developing a huge partnership that right now WU is one of the most recent partners that brings together government from different geographies, whether we're talking about Brazil or Korea or Indonesia or Estonia or Singapore or Mozambique, so you name it. So governments more ahead in the digital journey, but also governments that are earlier in their digital journey. But again, also universities, companies like Microsoft or MasterCard, and also other international organizations like the OECD, the European Commission. The purpose is really to have here a common space, a common forum to discuss the digitalization of government. What are our main priorities and what are we mostly focusing on? So on the one hand, we've been developing what is called analytics and thought leadership. So we've been publishing a lot of how-to notes, reports, so trying to jump in on different GovTech areas. So whether we're talking about interoperability, green GovTech, civic tech, mobile government, so you name it, all this kind of information is available in our website, and you are welcome to go there, download each report and provide us, please, feedback. So here's an invitation to you. Another dimension of the GovTech Global Partnership is what we call global public goods and convening. And here we focus on very different domains. We focus on having events, whether remotely or in person, that can support knowledge sharing in this area. We focus on issues of measurement of GovTech maturity through our GovTech Maturity Index. We have also developing our GovTech Academy, academy, foreseeing some courses available online where you can, or everybody can explore their concepts. We have a GovTech Innovation Lab also being launched, so a lot of fronts of battle on this. Additionally, the partnership is also supporting directly countries that are what we call World Bank partners. And here you can see, again, from different geographies, whether in Mongolia, in Somalia, in Egypt, in Malawi, we are supporting projects, typically innovative in this area, and providing the funds and expertise so that several of projects in this area could be developed. Let me share with you what we are doing, because this is one of the main focus in terms of knowledge base, on developing knowledge base communities. Last year in May, after COVID, after meeting mostly remotely, we organized our first GovTech Global Forum. It was organized in the World Bank headquarters in Washington, DC, where we brought together several stakeholders, again, with a multi-stakeholder perspective around the table. I can see some of them that are here. So Professor Verena Dorner was with us in DC. I see also Daniel from the Ministry of Finance that joined, and others. Everybody together discussing during 2 days in Washington possible synergies in this area, in very different domains in this area. Besides that, we also have, well, something happened there with the lettering. We have our GovTech working groups, so that are groups that bring together, again, different stakeholders interested in different GovTech work streams, and that work in a very agile way, so sharing knowledge, providing inputs to different reports that we are developing. For your reference, we have one on mobile government that is led by Austria and Brazil. We have one on interoperability, and we have one on cloud computing. Typically, these are working groups that benefit from the expertise of experts from different countries, different governments or academia or civil society, and provide inputs in a very concrete way. Just to give you an example, and also benefiting again from the excellent support that we had with the Austrian government. So we published last year our mobile government how-to note. So a note exploring and providing policy guidance to countries in this area, and this note was produced together with the Austrian Ministry of Finance, and counting with great collaboration here. I see one of the authors here also in the audience. Gerard, thank you also for putting together this wonderful piece. And this report was launched here in Vienna, benefiting and with the participation of different stakeholders, namely our director of public governance came here, our practice manager, and that came up, and this resulted, as I was mentioning, from also the inputs of the working group on mobile government, meaning the 27 member countries that are part of this working group were able to provide inputs to this report. This is also available in our website, so feel free to jump in. On our GovTech Maturity Index, and this is the focus on how we measure GovTech. The GovTech Maturity Index, or GTMI, that's the acronym, measures GovTech maturity in 198 economies/countries in the world, and focusing on issues like core government systems, public service delivery, citizen engagement, or GovTech enablers. So it's an index that was developed building also on information that already exists from other international organizations like the UN, like the International Telecommunications Union, but also building on our framework to provide added value in this area. One of the big things of the GovTech Maturity Index is that all the data of this index is available online in our website. I mean, the raw data is there, so anybody, any person here in the audience can go there, check the information that we collected from 198 countries, play with it, explore it further, give it different angles. So that's the spirit of making all this information available. So let me also give you some of the observations or findings that we had from the GovTech Maturity Index. One, we've seen that, for instance, there are more and more countries that have what we call dedicated GovTech entities. So entities in the government that are responsible for leading this, this kind of agenda. Sometimes they are agencies, sometimes they are part of ministries in this area, but this is a growing tendency that we see around the world. Another point that I would like to highlight, so independently of the different regions of the globe, so Middle East and North Africa, or Europe and Central Asia, or South Asia, for instance, the issues of citizen engagement was always the aspect of GovTech that scored lowest in our GovTech Maturity Index. And this happens whether in countries that are more advanced in their digital journey, so more developed countries or countries from the global north, let's use this expression, but also in countries that are starting or that are not so advanced in their digital journey. So this makes us think about it. Of course, we also observed that in countries that, in FCV countries, mainly and we mean countries that are affected by fragile economies, conflicts, etc., the issue of GovTech is, of course, absolutely critical, and a lot of room for improvement, as we normally say, needs to be given. Also, to give you a taste, oh, so something happened there with the lettering, but some country examples about what we mean when we discuss GovTech or digital government. So you can consider, for instance, the example of Cabo Verde. A country with different islands in Africa that is an absolute example in terms of omni-channel service delivery, meaning delivering services using different channels, whether in person, mobile government, the web, or others. So they have networks of one-stop shops all over the country that work as a kind of common counter to provide services in this area. They also have a government services portal that is quite used by their citizens and by their companies, making sure that no one is left behind. In a total different geography, the eMongolia portal, that is an integrated service delivery portal, providing service again to citizens and companies, and that actually is being more and more developed and understood as strategic in the country. Actually, there's a project that is supported by the World Bank, focused on further improving the usability and the efficiency of online public services. So this to give you an idea about what we mean in practice by GovTech. Other examples here. So in Oman, an interoperability framework was developed. And what we mean by interoperability, we mean the capacity of governments exchanging information independently of the ministry, for instance, to the benefit of the citizen. Making sure that, for instance, when you request a service to your government, you don't need to provide your information more than once, because the ministries are crossing information among themselves. So interoperability is one of the priorities there. In a big country like India, another example, so through the NIC National Cloud, so you can find there different alternatives, and the government can find there different alternatives to host their information in the cloud, as well. And India is very known for this. There's also the Aadhaar project that basically is responsible for widespreading the use of digital identity in a country with the dimension of India, and is always understood as an excellent example of how technology can, in fact, help governments to move ahead on their journey. To finalize, and because we want to hear from our panels, what about AI? So I've been talking here for a long time about it, about what it can, about technologies, about what it can do. So just to give you, and try not to deep dive, of course, AI can bring several benefits to public service delivery, and can support the governments to provide in their processes, in the way that they interact with citizens, with companies. However, the number of challenges are also huge, and I think our speakers will address these issues. There are issues of the government being siloed and how to make sure that all the information flows and can be used for AI purposes. There are questions of the quality of data that is necessary to make sure that you have good AI systems going out there. Mostly what we are focused right now, and this is a common trend that we have, is when you look at AI, governments should be more than technology-driven, like embracing AI because it's cool, because it's nice, or whatever, to try to focus on problems. So being problem-driven instead of technology-driven. And this is really the case, and this is sometimes really the challenges that governments face. Besides that, of course, and I could talk for hours on this, there are issues of principles and digital rights that should be considered by government, questions of guaranteeing citizen engagement when you develop AI services, privacy and data protection, fairness, transparency and explainability, accountability. So numerous issues in this area, and actually we have a paper, a report published on this that I would advise you to go ahead. Most and foremostly, we are committed to make sure that when using this technology, governments can use it in a rational way, can use it to making sure that it benefits its citizens, and if possible, making sure that if they are embracing AI, they are really sure that this is the technology they need, meaning that they don't have simpler technologies that can do and solve their problems. So if you want to go ahead with AI, if you want to take the best out of it, make sure that it's really trying to solve a problem from the different citizens. And that's it. Thank you, and looking forward for the discussion with the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much, João, for giving us this great insight in not just what the GovTech Global Partnership Network is doing, but also what the challenges are of digital government in general, and of course, very nicely leading into our panel topics. And when you were talking, I was also thinking about what you said, it's not just about the technology, right? It's engaging citizens, understanding the why behind how people use technology, how some is accepted, how some fails. I'm quite happy when I was thinking about that because, well, of course, at VU, we aim to educate our students, towards proactive decision makers and shapers of, well, future systems, including digital government, and specifically, so I'm seeing a couple of my students from the digital economy masters here, and this is one of the aims that we have, really having this interdisciplinary view on things, not just technical, but not only operational either. So I think, and this is also something that we're going to try and bridge in the panel, bring together in the panel. Yeah, without much further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists. I'm very happy that you took the time to be here today. So let's start with Anna Simic, and may I ask you on the stage. So hello, Anna. Let's give it in the middle. And so Anna is actually one of Austria's digitalization and AI leaders. She's been very active in leading AI and automation projects in many big companies, including the A1 Group, Henkel, or Bwin. And now I'm allowed to say that recently she became CEO of the Vienna-based Engage, which is, I'm sure most of you are familiar with it, an IT service agency for digital, with a digital AI and tech focus. And now Anna will continue her mission with her team of delivering advice, hands-on advice actually for AI strategy, innovation, and user research. So congratulations for that, and thank you for taking time out of your calendar to be here today. And that brings me to our next panelist, which is Thiago from the World Bank. May I ask you on stage as well? So Thiago has been with the World Bank since 2010. He has actually been researching the challenges of ICT in digital government for a long time, even during his PhD at the European University Institute and later at the University of Zurich's e-Democracy Institute. And very relevantly for today's panel, he's just recently published a report on AI and the future of government, unexpected effects and critical challenges. So I'm very happy that you're here to talk to us about that. Then our next panelist is Clemens Senner. Please come on stage. Who is a policy officer in the Federal Ministry of Finance in the Department for Digital Strategies and Innovation. And his focus is AI policy and the data economy, and he nicely complements a panel with political science and public policy background, and you've already had also industry experience working as a strategy consultant in the public sector. Thanks for being here. And last but not least, by any means, we have Jürgen Willems, our very own Jürgen Willems. Who is, well, most of you know him, but I'll introduce him anyway. He's a professor of public management and governance in the Department of Management here at WU. And he's been doing research for a very long time on the interactions between citizens, state, and citizens and society. And also very pertinently to today's panel, he's been focusing a lot on ICT interactions with citizens in the public sector, and recently how to implement technology in an ethical way. So thank you very much, all of you, for being here. Thanks for you for joining us. And now we'll finally get to the question of what is the role of AI now? And let's just say, well, what we usually reading is like AI is going to revolutionize something or other, right? And we're sort of waiting for the big revolution. So my first question goes to Clemens. So in Austria, in the Austrian public sector, like what have been the big AI revolutions? Has there been one so far?
Yeah, interesting question. Let me just first thank you for the invitation to this distinguished panel, and also explaining what the Austrian government has been doing. As you mentioned, Alexander Banfield excuses himself. He sends his greetings also. Also want to thank you, the World Bank, for this long partnership we established, especially in the project with mobile government solutions. Revolution in public sector are often not mentioned in one sentence. But the revolution in the public sector is slow, but it's a steady process. And Austria has been doing a lot in terms of digitizing government services, especially targeted government to citizen services. And we have been doing currently the EI strategy, also revamping the measures. We are launching a data strategy soon. And the BMF, also Ministry of Finance, also kickstarted ID Austria that you probably know, digital identification service, and also other initiatives targeted to digital literacy or AI literacy, which are also very relevant topics for the Global South, where we can learn and exchange also with other countries. Yeah. Let me just mention two challenges. First, we see this issue of implementing GovTech and AI solutions, as Joao mentioned, in the public sector itself. We have to set up the data governance, getting the right data. And on the other hand, we have this lot of regulation coming. I don't have to mention in this room the AI Act, but also even more important for the public sector itself, the Data Governance Act. So here we have to set up and designate also competent authorities. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So what I'm hearing is like not the AI revolution, but maybe the regulation revolution. But let's see what other countries have. So Thiago, can you give me onto mind any examples of like AI in GovTech, like where in other countries you said this would really be or is a game changer?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. And actually, I had a past history in academia, and when I entered this university, I kind of like, maybe I should have stayed in academia. So it's great to be here. And then I thought it again when I looked at my work email. So, so I mean, in terms of, I think when we think about AI in government, right, putting the issue of policy aside, which is in regulation, which is extremely important, but if you want to see like the potential of AI, probably we're going to be looking at use cases in government, right, and who are doing this. The obvious one, and the usual suspect is Estonia, right? So if you Google Estonia use cases artificial intelligence, you're going to have a list of hundreds of interesting use cases, right? But one thing that Estonia is doing that I think is extremely interesting and might be we might be seeing happening further with AI is what we talk about proactive digital services, right? So instead of like waiting for the citizen to come and require a service, it is that you automatically start triggering a certain service. So for instance, a family had a kid, you start to enroll them in certain programs, you remind the parents of certain things. So it is the state trying to kind of like eliminate barriers and proactively providing the services, whereas traditionally it is the citizen that does the services. But another, case that I find extremely interesting from a very different place, it is India. The government of India is doing fantastic work on artificial intelligence. I invite you all to look at a page called Jugalbandi is the initiative, I can't spell it. So in which they combine LLMs such as ChatGPT or other types, right, with Indian language models to provide services, right? India has one challenge, which is a large population with lots of illiteracy from one side, and also lots of dialects there. So this makes a lot of people do not access, for example, services to which they have the right to. So Jugalbandi, essentially it's a kind of like it is a WhatsApp application, but there are other means through which you can do. But it is a solution which provides both voice and text message services in multiple languages. So for example, there's one that is called My Scheme, which is essentially about social protection and social benefits. So anybody with a simple phone can just call a number and interact with the iVoice, and that starts to enroll you, tell you about your opportunities and things like that. There's another one called Jagrit. People have lots of difficulty of access to justice. So Jagrit is trained on 35,000 Indian justice cases, and that system trained on cases act as a lawyer for you vis-a-vis the state, giving you advice, right? I mean, you might say, well, that's a bit obvious. I don't think it's game-changing. But I think with AI and technology, what is game-changing is always what is like elegant, simple, and solves lots of problems to lots of people, right? So I like to say, like GovTech or digital government, it's not about doing the fancy stuff. It is about doing the best for the most with the least.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Maybe I will give over to you, Anna. Like, what is your, like, from a more industry-focused point of view, like, what would you call game changers? Is it like digital governments are just not ambitious enough, and it's like, yes, you could have big game changers, or what would the industry call like a game changer? What would the ambition be there?
That's a very interesting question, and I'm now, while listening, also thinking a lot about how you could compare businesses and government. And there is a striking difference for businesses, and I'll come back to the to the game changers. Businesses have for-profit business, have a business goal, usually to increase profit by delivering certain service with a certain quality for the customers. So there's always the purpose, kind of the business objective that is there to be achieved. And starting with that objective, you can come down to your operations and to your services and then figure out what's not working well, or where can you improve, where can you get more efficiency or more productivity or better service for your customers. And that's where also AI big game changers come. For example, you probably are all aware of the creative industry, so the marketing and sales departments are very prone or like functions that have a lot of cases for AI. But then there's a lot about knowledge management, giving access to information to the widest possible group of people in the company, and optimizing these operations. Now, when you look at the public services, the question is, what is the business goal? Do we have a clarity on what do we want to achieve? And I would argue that it's not so simple to say it, because you might say, yes, accessibility is something that we want to improve. We want to have great services, easy to use, accessible to the most. But what could happen is that you offer a great AI or digital service, and by that, you actually leave out a lot of people who don't have access to these services. So you're not really achieving your goal. So it's a bit different, because you actually have to provide the services from the public perspective, and you want to provide it in the best possible quality. But citizens can't really opt out, because there is only one government and one state. So you don't have... you don't really have a choice. So I see this as a very interesting problem, and I have a lot of respect from all the public services and organizations who are trying to solve that puzzle. As said, and the puzzle is the inclusion versus ease of use. And I would say in this context, a lot also data protection and privacy and individual rights. And I have to say this because it's simply a topic that is very close to my heart. I did not grow up in a state that was or is highly democratic, let's say so. And we always assume when we talk about this improving of government services with AI that we live in a free speech democratic state that has our best interest in mind, which would be maybe it's also interesting to talk about, is not the case everywhere. So, yeah, that's another topic.
Yeah, that's definitely a very good point. Maybe I can give it back to you, Thiago, because I mean, obviously the World Bank has projects in states that are, let's say, further down on democratic indices. And well, what's some of the challenges specifically then for AI in GovTech that you foresee, or maybe you have an example too of how that's going or not?
Yeah, well, some of the challenges, sometimes it is about, then it's a bit more like the political scientist, me talking, right? It's like when you start to put too much technological power in the hands of regimes that are not perhaps thinking on the best on the good of all, which of course there are mechanisms for safeguarding there from a certain perspective. I think one challenge that we have, it is the issue of capacity as well, in terms of technical capacity. But in the case of AI, in developing countries. I think another challenge is the effect of what I like to call squeezing the balloon, right? So you start to regulate a lot AI in developed countries, right? So you have an industry that stops making money. For instance, the misinformation industry, the fake news industry. So what happens, these companies, they start to migrate to developing countries because it is unregulated, governance is very weak, enforcement is very weak, and then they start to extract rents and create even more damage to the case of democracy. Misinformation is a great case. There's some reporting, I think, from 2019, and there wasn't all this talk about AI already on how with regulations around fake news getting stronger in developed countries, how these firms started to go and become much more active in elections in Africa. So another challenge that we have, it is the regulation needs to be from a global governance perspective, right? Otherwise, we're just squeezing the balloon, we're making it safer for some, but making perhaps much unsafer for others. I would say that's a big challenge. But there are also opportunities. I just want to say one big opportunity, three opportunities that I think that are in developing countries. First of all, big AI, LLM models, pretty soon they're going to run out of data to feed their models, right? People are already fighting for that, right? So where's the new data? Is the undigitalized data, books and things like that. And where is that? That is mostly in developing countries, right? So maybe data was the new oil, which is actually a bad metaphor. But anyway, perhaps undigitalized data will be the new oil, and that will be in the hands of countries. The other thing it is, developing countries, they have much more malleable institutions, which can be a bad side, but they also are very good at policy innovation. Because when it's about AI, we talk a lot about innovation policy, but with AI, that changes a lot. You need to be thinking in terms of policy innovation. And I think when it comes to that, developing countries, because their institutions are younger, they have an edge on making policy innovation, and perhaps that's where they will start to perhaps get in a bit of a comparative advantage vis-a-vis other countries.
Great. Well, since you're mentioning like younger institutions, but perhaps also like a younger workforce that is more digitally savvy, that brings me to one other topic, and that is like not just the citizen engagement, but also the public servants engagement, right? And I mean, Jürgen, you've done research, right, on public servants and stereotypes of public servants, and how that might translate to actually, how does AI affect the public servant, right? That is now supposed to suddenly be sort of co-pilot, maybe even for the citizen, explaining like what is the government doing with AI. So what is your take on that? So what are we actually asking our public servants to do?
I think it's a very good question because indeed everyone who works in the public sector has to deal a little bit with the stereotype. At family parties, the jokes are made about being slow, about bureaucratic and so on and so on. And that's also that's the rhetoric in the media. It's a rhetoric sometimes by politicians. Of course, politicians, if they get into power, they will say they will change the public sector. A politician who doesn't promise that will not be elected. And very often that's driven based on the stereotype that the sector isn't innovative enough and and the people working there, that there is a certain stereotype about them. Studies that we did is we actually asked people in several countries, and we really asked them or to reflect on what do you think when we say public servant, what do you think when we say police officer and so on. And actually the citizens don't see it that negative. So that is definitely something that is there. And that's a bit, I guess, the paradox or the struggle that is going on. Also, a lot of these people, they're public servants themselves, and they're not only confronted with the stereotype of you might be bureaucratic and slow. Very often also the logic to explain new technologies is you are slow, you are not working, your systems are bureaucratic and so on. And therefore, we have here this very awesomely working AI that we have from the private sector. And what we do see with public servants is that there is some fatigue to this, like yet another project implemented and yet another new technology, and now it's ChatGPT, and now it's this. And it's this fatigue. And actually, the public sector has developed to do stuff, to make sure processes are right, but normally it's not developed to innovate all the time. We have this business logic to innovate, and we have to innovate to keep making profit. But actually, the public sector is there to do basic processes right. And indeed, they can be more efficient after a while, but it's not the main purpose. But you hear all the time in education, in many ministries, but also among street-level bureaucrats, they have to implement all the time new technologies. And it's a bit what João said, like a lot of the changes are technology-driven. We have a new technology, we know the public sector is non-efficient, we know this, so this technology is going to solve it all again. And you said it, much more problem-based. I think also the motivation from public servants will be much better fulfilled when it's shown what it actually going to change, what problem is it going to change. So that is, so yes, I fully agree, the stereotype is there, and it brings a lot of fatigue if they are always confronted with it when it's actually not like that.
So maybe, Clemens, because we talked about like innovation in the public sector beforehand, right? And like the German approach of funding labs, digital labs or data labs all across the ministries. Exactly. So why isn't Austria doing that? Or is Austria doing that? Tell us all about it.
So, Germany just launched today actually their Federal Data Institute. Also, another great example is the US, which put forward a lot of executive orders in regards to implementing AI experts in governments, creating transparency, and you mentioned also Estonia, they're creating inventories of AI use cases, and so also we can learn. But, you know, innovation, as you mentioned, and public sectors often are called, like, it's an oxymoron, but actually I think like innovation also needs bureaucracy. And there's this concept of agile stability. So the challenge for the government is also like to bring in the change while keeping also running the services, the ongoing services. So that's the challenge and the balance we also have to strike in the sector. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, of course, whenever we're talking about certain groups of people will be expected to interact with AI. Well, the next question is, well, can they actually do it in terms of AI literacy? Mm-hmm. And I know, Anna, you've been doing a lot of work for a long time on AI literacy. And I was wondering about, on your take for, you know, what does that actually ask our citizens or public servants to do? And what are some solutions? What do you think?
Yeah. AI literacy and data literacy, I have to add, are the key, or that's the key competence of the 21st century. I think we can all agree on that. Not so much, and I think that's an interesting thought that you said, that public services are not used to innovation. They don't maybe need to innovate for the purpose of innovation, but if they innovate, they have a huge influence on the literacy of the society. So it's a win-win, actually. If you implement some cool new digital AI features and we all learn from them and how cool they are, then it will raise our overall literacy. See ID Austria, I think it's a great example of how, or Estonia, how the literacy can be more inclusively increased across the society. Because what the data shows, but things are changing. So last year we had the data that around 20% of people in organizations, private companies, so this is not public services, only 20% call themselves AI or data literate. That means 80% would not call themselves data literate. Of course, this for sure increased in the last year, and we see now there's been recent data from Pew Research in US that shows that the ChatGPT usage has jumped by 15% just in 1 year among the people below 30, which many of you here, you belong to this group. It's 43% of them use ChatGPT regularly, which is great news, every second one. However, the second age group is already 25% below, so we are around 22% regular usage. And then the more you go to the 60 plus, we are below 10%, or US is below 10%. Which means yes, youngsters are more fearless, more eager to use new services, great, and they will adopt public services, digital public services easier. And they will become more efficient and more effective in their work, but the others won't. And there's going to be a huge digital divide that we have been working for the last 10, 15 years, a lot, we as a societies, to close. Digital divide of not just among age groups, but also more, let's say, less privileged groups or groups with less access. Also women, data shows that women are definitely disadvantaged in that case. Okay, so we've been working to close this divide, and now divide is opening up again. So that means we need to work on all sides, and universities and educators play a huge role, but every one of us plays a role. So if you know anything about AI, please teach your neighbor, your granny, your kid, whoever. Show the tricks and tools, and whatever you know, share the knowledge. This is the only way we can close the gap fast. We cannot count only on VU to teach us all, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely. So, as you mentioned, I was going to ask Clemens about, specifically like literacy initiatives, like in Austria. So, what is happening on that end? Because I mean, of course, we've been talking about it for at least well over a year now, that this is necessary, right? But so what's actually happening?
So current in the AI strategy, we're planning also workshops, the digital competence offensives, digitale Kompetenzoffensive, and across Germany are planned 4,000 workshops, actually, physical workshops, where all kinds of age groups are getting trained and educated in terms of AI and data literacy. Yeah. That's a project in terms of strengthening the literacy. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is all also right with the aim of having inclusive services in terms of everybody has access to them, everybody has access to, but specifically also the AI component, right? So what is your vision of like what does that look like, right? So will I have in the future like my little chatbot that's like my very personal helper navigating me through all sorts of bureaucratic interventions, or this idea of the like bot or human co-pilot that's been discussed now. So what, like Jürgen, maybe from your point of view, what are some critical assumptions, especially about like the behavior of this bot that I might make as a user?
No, it's a good question. I think what might be the trade-off, we do not want to change bureaucratic literacy for, so like if they do not know how to interact with the state anymore and the bot can help them now, so we have to just change the one literacy for the other. So, and therefore, I think it's indeed the good combination. So there is, of course, a lot of behavioral evidence how people interact with AI, that there are also biases in that. They might over-assume human nature, they might under-assume human nature, they might over-assume the capabilities of it and so on. And I think that is just, it shouldn't stop us from exploring these things, as you say. We could also think in a Google kind of logic with smart forms. Of course, if also government forms would be pre-completed, there's probably not that much wrong with it. It just, indeed, but we shouldn't make people less literate in how to deal then with these forms and what does it mean and so on, and see what the consequences are. Another thing is also, and we did, but it was still a very hypothetical study, is by giving somewhere more power to the AI, or at least having the feeling that we give more power and AI decides for us whether we are public servants and it gives us decisions, and we can follow it, or also as citizens, like the AI has completed my form, there might also be some blame shifting when it goes completely in the wrong direction. We did test it a little bit, like if a police would follow robot advice in arresting someone and so on, which is still a very extreme case. But there are, of course, many mundane cases where someone might say, yeah, but in the end it weren't my words, it was ChatGPT saying this. And that's also something, because that would be changing bureaucratic literacy. What can you say, what can you not say with digital literacy, and that shouldn't happen. So.
I would like to add on that. What we find it very interesting how, on one side, as a society, we're super fearful of AI. On the other side, we want to jump to the most advanced use case and have it ready tomorrow, which would be the personal bot. It's a great story and a great use case to talk about, but it's actually one that is very difficult to implement, and I would argue maybe not also as useful and necessary, because there is so much to be done in the background. So let's assume, I was talking about the business or the goals, the purposes. We as citizens want certain jobs to be done, or we have jobs to be done, and we want to do this in the fastest, easiest possible way, through whatever kind of interface. Is AI behind or not? Actually, I shouldn't care. Ideally, public services will implement AI to make this more efficient in the background, but it doesn't have to be kind of on the front end of the citizen, and it can be simple on that end. It doesn't have to be super sophisticated. So what actually I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of cases under the hood of all the organizations and operations, and it doesn't have to be the high-end personal bot.
Yeah, let me just ask that to all of you, right? So, okay, so on the one hand, great, it just happens as long as it's right. It doesn't need to concern me what actually happens. But now when I'm looking at use cases like, for example, using AI to help judges or to help policing, like Jürgen said, yeah, so what's the ideal state there? Even, if a judge maybe has a little more time to consider, make this decision. The policeman might have to decide, like, on the spot, do I follow the advice or not? So what's the recommendation there? What should we strive towards, basically?
I would just say one sentence, sorry to jump to that answer immediately. It's AI in the loop. It's not human in the loop, so it's not AI doing everything and we just come in, but it's us taking decisions, but using as much as possible AI to help us come to the right conclusion. So policemen could advise with AI, but have the final judgment herself.
Just to add, it's also an empirical question, right? I mean, we only know if we test. That's what academia is there as well, to do experiments, run randomized control trials, see what works and what doesn't work. And because we can spend lots of time saying AI can do that, humans do that better. Just yesterday, for instance, I think Anthropic came kind of like their latest version of Anthropic is more persuasive than a human being, right? If you use persuasion. So I think it's always going to be an empirical question, but again, the safeguards and having like AI as a supportive, right, or as an amplifier and not a replacer, I think that's a good principle, particularly for the civil service. Otherwise, you're going to have the same thing that happened with the email and postal service, disruption, right? Just Google post office strikes on Google and look for when email came, you had like post office strikes all over. Right? So, and particularly because you had technology replacing a function, a task, a public task, right? So the idea of like amplifying as opposed to replacing, I think might be the way of being. And what we can and cannot do, yeah, well, let's have the help from academia to find out.
I think Jürgen and I will be more than happy to do all the experiments you could think of.
But I want to say something to that. Of course, I fully agree the ability to test this. Of course, we say yes, especially when it gets funded. But the thing is also, and that is a difference, like this testing, when the goal is something very measurable, or in a for-profit context, you can say we did it, we test 3 things, and this brings more profit. But in the public sector, there are also some things where we would have AI help us, and it would suddenly come up with decisions, and because it's AI, because it's a black box, and some decisions are subjective, like should someone get this passport or not, should someone get this job at the job office or something. Indeed, was that criminal behavior that I saw on a computer, and should I intervene or not, but I might actually ruin that person marriage proposal or something. So that is so sometimes there's also like, we could test it, but the output that we always try to say success or not is very often subjective and never measurable. And therefore we might just copy paste, of course, all the biases that are in human behavior. So that is something, yes, test, but even more than in other cases with a big star next to it. So And that's something where I, from our field then, like from academia, see that, of course, it's very hip and trendy now to study whatever and test whatever, sometimes forgetting a little bit, like, but this will hopefully never be practically implemented because there is no final correct decision in this. So it's just an extra remark. Yes.
I think the key word is also validation. So there has to be a human to validate whatever the outcome. But I just wanted to please, black box, it's not a black box. It should not be a black box. It might be a black box now for certain applications, but also the regulation will help us not to have it as a black box. I think this is something that we should all just not assume as it's a given, AI is in black box. It should not be, and we should request it not to be.
Just to add on here, you all mentioned high-risk AI use cases, and in terms of the AI Act, these would be like audited, documented, and there's a high barrier to actually implement those also. But you had a key message, really amplifying and lifting up the civil servants and refocusing also the work from the tedious, repetitive tasks to the citizen-focused work. Yeah.
Just one thing, giving a bit of like a very developing country context, right? I worked in some countries in Africa where doctors, trained doctors, only 20% can correctly diagnose diarrhea, which is a not very difficult thing to do, right? On the other hand, you have now AI, for instance, doing diagnostics, in many cases, much better than doctors. Right, so I think, for example, should we be using AI in medicine and to which extent? How far should we go on that, right? I think if you ask the mother of a kid who's known this doctor only gets diarrhea right 1 in 5. And if you ask the mother of a kid who has access to health services here in Vienna, the answers will be very different, right? And that's why I think as well, kind of like the policy and the answers that we give on what AI cannot and cannot be done has to be as well kind of like involving and taking into account the context. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with how far we go, but for example, should we, and I'm not saying answering the question, but for example, should we be avoiding using AI in the context, like maybe even just let the AI, call AI and tell the symptom, right? I'm going like very extreme away, kind of like high risk medicine and AI giving the stuff. Should we giving the chance that AI can hallucinate 1 in 1,000, where we know the real doctors are hallucinating 1 every 4 times, right? So I think the context and how we do that and which policy does will depend a lot. And that's why as well, I think citizens need to have a voice on what can and cannot be done, right? And not just experts and elected officials. And that's why I was talking about not only innovation policy, but policy innovation, which essentially means bring the citizens in to start devising policies and regulations.
Thank you. I think this is an excellent statement to open to questions, giving the citizens and the experts a voice. And we have people here with the microphones, so please just raise your hands. Feel free to ask questions, give us your comments. We'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. So this is my question to our guest from the World Bank. I've actually written down my question. So the world right now is mostly using the OpenAI large language models. There are others out there in the world as well, but there still are a lot of countries in the world who are not there yet from the infrastructure point of view to develop their own large language models. So if they rely on such tech giants, what are your thoughts on first, issue of bias in the LLM due to the training data, and second, about the data privacy and sanitization while using those models, while integrating AI at the government level into those companies who can't have their own LLMs?
Yeah, I mean, very quickly, and I wrote about this recently, which is, first of all, the language bias, right? I mean, you have AIs underperform in low-resourced languages. This is number one, and this is why in some cases, for example, Serbia, where I work, where I'm based, it's a low-resource language. The performance is clearly not good, right? And one of the recommendations that we're doing is precisely for the government, and that we're saying we were willing to see how we can support for Serbia to develop its own LLM model, right? We're also working with the people from Jugalbandi who do that. Because, and just to explain, there's not only an issue of underperformance, but there is also an issue of costs, right? Because the workaround that we do for underperformance with AI in language, it is you translate to the language, you bring it, you solve it in English, and you bring it back and translate to the language. But that increases the number of tokens, and it kind of like increases the cost. So on the issue of language and developing our own language models, of course. On the issue of like using OpenAI more or less, again, one of the options that, at least in my work program, which covers the Western Balkans and the EU, of starting to work with this model, the kind of like the matrix, so to speak, of Jugalbandi, is precisely because we can use any other solution other than OpenAI, including open source models, right? And I think it's something that we want to be doing on a case-by-case basis. But yes, definitely, strategic for governments to develop their language models somehow. The question is, if they are just developing language models that afterwards get capitalized by big tech, they are losing it, right? They're working for the others. And so what is the mechanism here that you're going to turn, kind of like as you build language models, making them more effective in a way that you can redistribute the benefits, also financial benefits, to those governments that are investing on that?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My question would go to the left side of the panel, and it would be, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. It would be about your personal estimation. When do you think AI will come to public administration, for real, implemented?
You want to start? Or?
I think more on the left.
So I can assure we actually did a study last year, and there are already about 30 AI topics across all ministries. And of those, 55% are actual AI solutions that are running in pilot phase, but also implemented really. And one example would be it's an already established special unit in the Ministry of Finance, the Predictive Analytics Competence Center. And here, really, tax assessments are analyzed, millions of tax assessments for fraud and inconsistencies. And since 2020, already about $500 million have been saved for the taxpayers by this special unit. And there are other examples too. Currently, we're piloting free projects. One of those is, for example, a visual handwritten analytics project for soil taxation registers. And these are very complex handwritten notes dating back to the 1970s. And they're all relevant for different topics like taxation or also environmental questions. So, and this also shows the variety of AI projects, and also that you really have to consider the training can be very manual and tedious. And you always need experts and the experts in the public sector to actually train these very specialized models.
Just to add to that, there are, of course, some very specific fields where I think it's already used, like predictive modeling for safety and so on, anti-terrorism or something. So there is, it's used in very specific cases. Or as said, like in some healthcare applications in the public sector, then of course, if you really mean like this broad use in interactions with citizens, I think it might still take some time, and I'm not going to put some years on it, but I think it has to do with some main conditions that first have to be fulfilled. And as long as the public debate hasn't crystallized on accountability, who will be then responsible, and some transparency, we want the public sector to be transparent. And I fully agree, AI is not necessarily a black box. It's just for a lot of people a black box. And there are AIs that are very transparent in which decision they made, which would be very good, actually. Might be even better than a personal decision. But I think these 3-4 conditions that there have to be solved. So it's not a technology deadline or it's something, it's really human behavior, political agreement that needs to be made. And everyone knows, regardless what country you are, that can take some time. So that's what I think is the academic answer to that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm just looking at the time a little, and I mean, I promised everybody, including myself, that we will finish on time, so we can take the discussion out to where the drinks and the food is. With that being said, I think I will invite all the panelists to make a very, very short concluding statement. And while they think about how to make the concluding statement shorter, I will talk a little bit to give them some time to prepare. And already thank you at this point for joining us. And I would really like to invite you all to stay and to network because, you know, as João said at the beginning, the GovTech Global Partnership lives only, you know, if there are actually people who are cooperating, who are talking. We've heard a lot about today about collaborative development of GovTech solutions, of taking the citizen on board when developing useful AI applications in the digital domain. And that's why we need you all there to take part in this discussion. And then obviously, you know, if there are any people who want to fund our many studies, talk to Jürgen, talk to us, talk to all the other scholars here. You will have a rapt audience. Yeah, that being said, I will give over now to maybe start with you, Clemens, for your last statement.
Yeah. From the learnings of the mentioned AI projects, I can say start small, bring in all stakeholders from the beginning on, be prepared that training can take longer of the models. And don't be afraid to just suggest and push projects. And you know, sometimes a project is a failure, but you can always take on learnings and always take something of this innovation project. And not every workflow or process has to be an AI tool or something. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. So what I think is also, it's like the positive side of all of this. So it's at this point a challenge. In another large data collection we just asked citizens in Germany and Austria for what can all new technologies be used. So we didn't focus only on AI. And you see that also there is some motivation among citizens too, that these technologies are used. And actually what we found is that citizens are not waiting for these processes to be even more efficient. They want these processes to be more transparent, more equality, more inclusion, and so on. So I think there is definitely a momentum also among the population. They now get, or they understand it through ChatGPT, but it's not necessarily always about efficiency improvement. It's also about reaching other goals. And another personal learning point for me from this panel is what Anna said. There is indeed also the government might have this educational function in implementing it. So maybe the government should be the first mover in trying this. Maybe it does cost more in effort, in time, and so on, but it can be this leverage for other projects. So that's...
Yeah, I will simply continue my statement. It fits perfectly. I think just one sentence, basically, to say that it's a huge opportunity for creating more happier citizens. So it's a great purpose that governance can have with these initiatives, and regarding all the other, as having all the safeguards. But I think we will all profit from it, and I'll actually look forward to more services coming from our government.
Thank you.
No, very quickly, this discussion reminds me of Antonio Gramsci, who would say like how we should approach emerging situations. And I think his recommendation applies to AI, which is with pessimism of the intellect and optimism of the will.
Oh. Oh. Thank you so much, Thiago. Well, I don't think I can say anything to top that. I look forward to talking to you outside. Let's give a big clap to our panel. Thank you so much for the tour.